Okay, MrMostDaysOff, now we're ready for the TeePublic ad.
Head over to tpublic.com/bestdarndiddly right now to support our show. Get yourself some Best Darn Diddly merchandise and help grow our podcast. I messed up there. Can I get another take?
Okay, just a second.
Out of the way, amateur. Hey, it's Krusty. Go to tpublic.com/bestdarndiddly. Hey, it's Krusty. Go to patreon.com/bestdarndiddly. Go to popthreads.com and save 15% with the discount code Simpsons. Hey, it's Krusty. Go to bestdarndiddly.com to get all your podcast needs from the greatest show on earth. Learn from a professional, kid.
All right, Krusty, we're ready for your take. Krusty?
Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to the Best Darn Diddly Review Show. This is a weekly podcast for anyone who loves The Simpsons, or ever has loved The Simpsons, hosted by two dudes that grew up on The Simpsons. My name is Miles, better known as MrMostDaysOff, and today we are getting sexual, because we're talking about Grandpa versus sexual inadequacy. And, of course, it's never fun to have sex alone, so joining me as always, your co-host with the most, Richie the WizKid. How you doing today, Rich?
If you don't know how to have fun by yourself in those regards, then we need to have a separate conversation later. But I will say this episode will quickly prove everything that women already know about us, is that all men are sexually inadequate. But yes, I guess we'll have a few small points to talk about in this episode. But yet, I remember this episode fondly. I will say, for the most part, I think it will live up to those terms, but we'll get into that eventually. Let me go ahead and throw it back to this asshole over here. The man, the myth, the Maplethorpe. It is Miles.
Yeah, I am.
That's why I said ass, because the picture of the book that Homer picks up has an ass on it. I wasn't just being a dick. Get it? Oh, but I'm...
So... we are talking about the very R-rated episode, Grandpa vs. Sexual Inadequacy, that originally aired on December 4th, 1994. Getting ever so close to a new year, Rich.
That's gonna happen, and we're already halfway through this year in real life, so what's going on? We used to be synced up very well.
Time is just a social construct, my friend. It clearly has no bounds.
Thank you, Mr. Sanchez.
The chalkboard gag for this episode starts out with, "My homework was not stolen by a one-armed man." Another reference to the very popular film, The Fugitive.
Wow, yeah, they've been going after The Fugitive a few times here recently.
Yeah, I think that it's a pretty popular movie at this time, so it kind of makes sense that it would be on everybody's mind. It was probably, there was a couple of references while it was in theaters, and now there's some writers making references who waited and caught it on VHS.
Absolutely.
The couch gag on this one is also pretty funny. We see the Simpsons running in a very dumb way. They've got their kind of backs arched. They have a really dumb, awkward smile. Their hands are in a weird placement. And we see their living room on a gag reel, kind of like a spinning repetitively in the background. Just like a Hanna-Barbera kind of. It's exactly what it is. In the commentary, they say specifically they are making fun of the animation at Hanna-Barbera during this opening. This is the type of thing that really drives David Merkin crazy, especially with the repeating backgrounds. And it's something that he only ever uses to make fun of how bad it is.
He only uses it as a sight gag.
Right.
Well, see, with age comes wisdom, and I've learned things over the years, but most of the things I've learned are from The Simpsons, so thank you, Mr. Merkin.
The episode officially opens with Homer watching TV. Specifically, it's the $1,000 movie. This is a gag of these kind of cheap late-night television action movies that would get played quite a bit back in the more prominent days of cable television. Homer is actually watching a movie called Good Time Slim, Uncle Doobie, and the Great Frisco Freakout, starring Troy McClure. However, while most fans apparently think this is a parody of Cheech and Chong movies, it is not. While there is some small references to Cheech and Chong, it's actually more of an amalgamation of a lot of these cheesy 1970s action films. And in fact, they said that it more closely parodies the movie What's Up, Doc than any Cheech and Chong film specifically. A lot of these action films were apparently shot in the San Francisco Bay Area back in the 70s.
Yes, and they always go up and down the roads, and I've always heard that, it gets kind of hilly, but not quite as hilly as it is in all the movies.
Hey, Rich, there's more than one way to get high, baby. While Homer is completely into this film, Marge is, well, she's at least wanting to. She's in her negligee, we'll say, and she's desperately trying to get Homer's attention.
Please, Marge, how often can I see a movie of this caliber on late night TV?
Is there something wrong, homie?
No, it's just that I've only seen this movie twice before, and I've seen you every night for the last 11 years. What I meant to say is, we'll snuggle tomorrow, sweetie. I promise.
Good save, Homer.
Good save. Have you ever employed that tactic before, Miles?
Oh, sure, yes, of course. All the time.
You will now.
A month later passes, we see, and a much fatter Homer comes walking into the bedroom. You can see Marge is still attempting to get Homer's attention in an intimate sort of way, but all Homer has to say is, enchiladas.
Smart man, I'm hungry now.
You can actually see Homer's buttons pop off of his pants as he sits down.
Oh, man. But she's still, in the mood, so he's not doing so hot right now.
No, even at this state, Marge still wants that Homer D, which is crazy to think about.
Home diddly-oni.
Yeah, there you go. We finally see later that year, it says in the script, that Homie and Marge are finally having some intimate time together. They're getting frisky in the bedroom, but damn it if kids don't ruin everything, because Bart burst in the door screaming for his mom and dad. Immediately, Homer and Marge have a great response here.
Don't turn on the light! Don't turn on the light!
So, while they're almost there, Bart unfortunately interrupts to tell them that there's a UFO outside of his window. And he's serious about it. For once, it's not a prank or anything. Bart is truly convinced that this is happening. But when they go to investigate, we can see that it's actually just an old golf umbrella that's stuck in the tree. Though it's actually pretty funny because the wind catches it and blows it right into Bart's window, and it still startles him.
And then he does the thing that all kids do.
Can I sleep with you guys tonight?
No.
Can I sit on the roof with a baseball bat in case a UFO does come?
Yes, that's fine. Good.
So they've gotten rid of Bart for now, and they're back to the bedroom.
I like how they start off with the UFO reference here, since that'll come into play a lot more later on.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a lot of fun they have with that whole bit. And they do say in the commentary the entire idea for this whole sequence with the UFO that's going to play out throughout the episode comes from the idea that most of the Simpsons writers, and also myself, and I think a lot of us, there's just an age when you're a kid where you kind of get sucked into this concept that everything is a conspiracy, and all of these things like aliens and ghosts and conspiracy theories are so new to you that you don't have enough knowledge to be able to debunk some of the easily debunkable stuff yet.
Those damn reverse vampires.
Well, those are real. Unfortunately, though, by the time Marge gets Bart settled on the roof with a baseball bat and gets back to bed, Homer has already dozed off to sleep. Marge actually wakes Homer up to say, look, we need to talk because we are not having a great marriage lately and we need to fix this.
Marge, there's just too much pressure. What with my job, the kids, traffic snarls, political strife at home and abroad. But I promise you, the second all those things go away, we'll have sex.
And to Marge's credit, I'm in the same boat. I would be here, especially if it were Homer. Grr. I simply can't wait that long. Maybe we should get some help. How about a book?
Oh, okay.
A tasteful book.
Oh, all right.
So the next day, it's off to the bookstore, and we see Homer and Marge in the marital relations section. Homer very excitedly picks up the Kama Sutra, and in way too loud of a voice for Marge's liking, he says, "Hey, Marge, look! This guy looks just like a poo." Marge is really concerned that people are going to see them. And again, keep in mind that they chose the tasteful marital section, but this is old-time small-town mentality where, truth be told, it's very similar to how the internet works today, but just on a much smaller spectrum, where you didn't want necessarily everybody in your circle knowing all of your business. Instead, nowadays, we literally share it with the world.
If Helen Lovejoy sees you in that section, all hell's going to break loose.
It's gone. Yeah, you're going to be
Which
all
is kind of
over town.
ironic if you think about it.
Yeah, it's true. Once again, Bart comes and interrupts this moment where the Simpson parents are looking for that thing to reignite the spark in their relationship. And Bart interrupts by asking, "What you guys reading?"
And I love how they just like randomly pick up a book nearby.
Yeah, they both just struggle to grab anything non-sexual. It ends up Marge actually grabbed Tanks of the Third Reich.
I'm just reading up on artillery.
And Homer also grabs a book at random and proudly declares, "Yes, I'm pursuing my interest in..." Ah! He looks down and sees that the book he had picked up is actually just a male butt on the cover with the word Mapplethorpe, which Mapplethorpe is actually an artist from the 1970s who's actually most known he's from the 1960s and 1970s, specifically in New York, and the majority of his work centered around nudes, and specifically it was very into S&M and the BDSM lifestyles in general, something that was a lot more controversial at the time. I mean, hell, in 2018, there's even podcasts dedicated to things like kink. Shout out to Casual Sex with Crumb, part of the Somebody's podcast network.
At least some people have somebodies.
But yeah, no, I just thought it was so funny that Homer's embarrassed by the concept of art centered around S&M. And like I said, JD, who we've had on the podcast in the past, along with his wife Crises, actually, well, JD, this is actually just a project for Crumb. But yeah, he's got a great new podcast where he talks about not just kink, but a lot of kink-centered topics. And I believe he'll even have some guests, such as porn stars and other sex workers on his show in the future. Real interesting listen. It's a pretty short podcast, so give it a try sometime.
You get the kink and the stink. All right.
2 in the kink, 1 in the stink. All right, back to the show. Back to our show. So... good save again by Homer, his interest in Mapplethorpe. I love the scream that we get there. They decide, though, that maybe the books on tape section would be better off, and they stumble across a book narrated by Paul Harvey, which is hilarious to think about this radio personality, Paul Harvey, who is most known for his radio program that would often end with the sentence, "And that's the rest of the story."
He's like a nice Midwestern man on the radio who's like a pleasant version of Grandpa.
Ooh, Mr. and Mrs. Erotic American. We then get another great little bit here, just side bit that kind of contributes to the B plot we'll get into in a little while. But Lisa and Bart have both found some books that they're interested in. Lisa is excited because she found the new one by Al Gore, Sane Planning, Sensible Tomorrow.
Man, they were even nailing Al Gore in the mid-90s.
Lisa's really hoping that one is as exciting as his former book, Rational Thinking, Reasonable Future.
And if everyone would have read those 2 books, we wouldn't be in the situation we are in today's modern society.
What a crazy alternate universe that could have been.
No, that would have been a sensible alternate universe, Miles.
Ooh, crazy. I get it. Bart, however, is pursuing his interest in UFOs.
Yeah.
Did you know they're real, but there's a huge government conspiracy to cover it up?
Oh, that's just a paranoid fantasy.
And we get this wonderful animation sequence as the books get checked out. We see they swipe the kids' books across the barcode scanner, and it instantly starts to send a signal that we're actually following along as the viewer. The signal goes underground for a long ways before it's actually sent to a radio tower, shot up into space via satellite, and then transmits to the Pentagon, where a very high-ranking officer seems to be very concerned with the notification that comes through. He rushes to the White House, where we actually see him walk in and say, "Mr. Vice President, someone finally bought a copy of your book, sir."
Well, this calls for a celebration.
Celebrate good times, come on.
I will.
And Merkin likes to point out that this is exactly why Al Gore didn't succeed. It sums him up a little too well. So while the government is on to Lisa, and not Bart, actually, with the UFO thing, the Simpsons parents, once again, Homer and Marge, are still trying to rekindle that flame. They're now listening to that Paul Harvey Erotic Americans tape, and it's suggesting a few things to try. First off, they can try to take a romantic bath together.
Ooh.
But immediately we can see that this is a better idea in theory, because both Simpsons get stuck almost instantly, and Homer's actually crying out in pain because the spout is driving right into his back, and it actually looks quite uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Up until the point where it literally breaks, and then the spray hits Marge right in the face, and actually ends up extinguishing their candle that they had for mood lighting. So now they are both stuck and in the dark.
Kids? Kids!
So, since the bathtub wasn't quite roomy enough, Marge and Homer hit the open road, where the tape suggests maybe they can try a nice little romantic getaway, a vacation, just as long as they stay at one of the many fine AAA approved motor lodges. They choose to visit the Aphrodite Inn, which both has themed rooms and a conference center.
The Arabian Nights room looks nice.
Ooh, the Pharaoh's chamber has a vibrating sarcophagus.
Sorry there, Fred and Ethel. You should have made a reservation. We only got one room left.
And just then, Mayor Quimby burst out in a leopard skin leotard, I'm going to say. Loincloth maybe might be a better answer, to declare, "Hey, the toilet is overflowing in the caveman room." So we see Homer and Marge walking past all these fantastic looking rooms, like the safari room and the Camelot room, and then they get to their room, the utility room.
Woo! Here we are, the utility room.
This isn't very erotic. It's an actual utility room.
No, honey, it's a romantic fantasy. I imagine I'm the janitor, and you're the janitor's wife, who has to live with me in the utility room.
Trying to make the best of it, we see Homer and Marge laying in bed together.
It's a cot.
When the same... It is a cot, and it's the same manager as before walks in and says, "Hey, don't mind me, folks. Just need to get the old wet dry vac."
So you're saying the mission was a success, right? Romance rekindled?
According to Paul Harvey, by now your new improved love life should have you flinging woo like nobody's business. So do you, Mr. and Mrs. Erotic American. I bid good day. We then see the tape fly out of the car window, and we get this wonderful thing that can only be done in a cartoon and does not actually work in real life, though it somehow looks totally reasonable when it's done in animation. The car actually reverses and drives forward repeatedly over this tape, smashing it to bits in a manner that is just way, way too fast for real life.
So Homer was double tapping way before what's-his-face from Zombieland was double tapping, Jesse Eisenberg.
Rule number 1, baby, always double tap.
He like quadruple tapped, but good for you, Homer.
Well, the road trip was not a success at all. They did not rekindle their marriage at all, and they get back both in fairly upset stage. You can tell they're a little bit down about it. Even Abe is able to pick up on it, which is kind of amazing. Because when Homer and Marge arrive at their home, Abe, who has apparently been babysitting this whole time, is there to greet his son.
Welcome home, son. I broke 2 lamps and lost all your mail. What's wrong with your wife?
That line right there, I don't know why. I really like it. And I don't know what it is per se that I like about it, but there's just something with Grandpa Simpson not being senile in this moment, but actually being perceptive that is something fun to that.
But it also says something that, like, it's so obvious that even Abe realizes it.
Right. No, I think that might be part of it, is it's just like, it paints a picture of how bad things are getting with Marge and Homer. But Homer just responds that, never mind, Dad, you wouldn't understand.
Flu?
No.
Protein deficiency?
No.
Pneumomono ultramicroscopic cystophagonosis? Or something?
No. So that word right there, pneumonopcoloctratrauma microscopa silicova locanaconiosis.
Nice job, right. Miles.
That is actually the longest disease in the English language. And according to IMDb, it actually refers to the lung disease known as miner's lung, and can also be caused by breathing in too much poisonous volcanic ash. So that's why if you're in Hawaii right now, you should probably be pretty careful. There's actually a shorter version of the word available, and that is just pneumoconiosis. So, Homer just keeps writing his dad off as not having a clue, but Abe just keeps guessing.
Unsatisfying sex life?
No. Yes, but please don't you say that word.
What? Sex? What's so unappealing about hearing your elderly father talk about sex? I had sex.
Hey, you know what? I don't know about you, but I have to agree with Abe on this one. Everybody's fucked at some point, especially if you're older than I am. So why is it weird that we think about old people who have had sex in their past? I don't know. But it definitely is uncomfortable for Homer in this moment.
Then there is an exchange of sperm at some point in time with something.
Yeah, and your mom probably swallowed some at some point, too.
Probably.
Hey, statistics, man. It is what it is.
It's sperm, that's what it is.
But Homer has had enough of his father talking about sex. So he drives him home to the Springfield retirement castle. And he feels like since he's home safe, he's done his duty. See you next time we need your signature.
Oh, you never want to spend any time with me. Well, I can help you with your loving problem. I got a home remedy that'll put the zousers back in your trousers.
And we see Abe go to his bathroom sink where he starts to mix a bunch of shit together. Surely it's just an old man being senile, as we're going to come to find out. It was apparently his great-grandpappy's recipe, and he stumbled across it when he was trying to find a cheap substitute for holy water. But ended up making this sex tonic instead. Only when Abe finishes mixing it in the sink and goes to toss it to Homer, Homer has already snuck out and trying to get away. When he looks out of his bedroom window, we can see Homer getting into his car. Abe is upset by this, but calls out that even though he's an ingrate, use this, and one of my favorite lines in this episode, think of me when you're having the best sex of your life.
Here you go, you ingot.
I use a version of this joke all the time when I know people are like at a party or about to go having sex or go off and have sex or whatnot, especially when you're in college. I do this all the time. I'd be like, hey, think of me when you're doing it.
Yeah, which is not, it's not along the same lines as Grandpa, I would even say. You're just like, hey, picture me while you're inside of her. What I wanted to point out was one of the things in the medicine cabinet there in Grandpa's, it was the only thing I could clearly make out. A lot of it looked like old cologne bottles, but one of the boxes actually said asbestos pills.
Oh, yikes. Wow. Well, Homer doesn't think much of it, but on his way home, he actually does drink it. and we can see
Shouldn't drink
there
that while
is
you're
a
driving.
Transformation. No, it's mostly alcohol, actually. That's the secret ingredient. But we do see there is an effect. Homer starts to twitch a little bit, and then he gets a big smile on his face. He busts through the door of his home like he's got a mission to accomplish. He gives the kids some money, tells them to see a movie and stay at their Aunt Selma's. They will come and get them later.
No.
Marge is even kind of taken aback by what's going on, but Homer simply declares, "Marge, I'll explain to you afterwards." And he carries her up the stairs, and we get this classic imagery from cinema with a train going in through a tunnel.
The whole train, Miles.
The whole train.
The whole train.
A rocket shooting off into space, which both of these are classic images that are used in film to basically signal that somebody is having sex off screen. This is a trope that has been used many, many times before. In fact, it reportedly was first used by Alfred Hitchcock. However, the hot dogs on the assembly line is a Bill Oakley and a Josh Weinstein original, and they actually are really proud of this joke. We see the last image is just hot dogs going off the assembly line, and when the camera pulls back, we can see Bart and Lisa are watching
With
a
Maggie.
movie. Oh, with Maggie as well, of course, because they got all the kids out of the house. And you can actually see on the wall they're at a stock footage show, or a stock footage festival is what it was.
What do you think Mom and Dad are doing right now?
I don't know. And that brings us to the end of Act 1.
Let's slip on into that Act 2 tunnel.
We're going to go ahead and try to slide into Act 2, but first we're going to go ahead and take a quick break and hear from some buddies of ours.
Hello. Do you love Walmart? I do. Do you like your content randomly spewed all about in no particular order or context or topics to be had? Well, you're in luck. I host a podcast. It's called the Random Ramblings with Rob podcast, which I am Rob. So, that's who you'd be rambling with. You can check me out every Sunday on your favorite podcast app of choice. And you can go to randomrobcast.com to find out more information, or follow me on Twitter at itsbrob. That's ITSBROB. So check me out and enjoy the show.
Hey everybody, this is Lubes!
What?
Who? What?
Kinda got caught up in the moment, you know what I mean?
Jesus Christ. Sorry,
I'm sorry, man.
Take two.
Hey everybody, this is Goose!
And I'm Ripkin.
And I'm Jelly Bean.
And you can follow us on Twitter at the Wrestle.
Whoa, dude.
Shit, son of a
Right.
bitch.
You pulled the Goose there.
God damn.
Yeah.
All right, sorry, man. Take three.
Hey everybody, this is Goose!
And I'm Ripkin.
And I'm Jelly Bean. Oh, man.
God,
now I'm
son
Jelly
of a
Bean.
bitch. Now I want jelly beans.
I want
Jelly
jelly
beans.
beans too, besides
Okay.
the disgusting kind.
We seriously, we got
I'm
this.
just gonna eat some of these jelly beans.
No.
Nom noms.
Fuck, those are good. Okay, take five, guys.
Hey everybody, this is Goose!
And I'm Ripkin.
And I'm Jelly Bean.
And we are the Derailers!
And you can find us on Twitter at the Derailers, or you can find us on iTunes, Buzzsprout, and YouTube.
Make sure to leave a comment, subscribe, give us a thumbs up, smash the bell, do whatever you gotta do to keep this train on a track, because you know we won't, folks.
We also happen to be on Instagram.
Oh, yeah, that's right. We're on Instagram at Wrestle Nerds. You can follow me at Little Sock Puppets. You can follow Ripkin at...
Ripkin WN. But more importantly, listen on iTunes, Buzzsprout, and YouTube. Derailers!
We've clearly cut ahead a little bit in time, just by, I would say, several seconds to several minutes. When we get back for Act 2, Homer is shaving in the bathroom. Marge is still very clearly admiring her man.
Here he is. Rex Harrison and Paul Anka rolled into one. That tonic really works. You and Grandpa should bottle it and go into business together.
You want me to spend more time with Dad? What about my New Year's resolution?
You can make a lot of money.
Yeah? Where are my pants?
You threw them out the window in a fit of passion. You said you were never going to need them again.
And we cut to outside of the Simpsons home where Homer's pants flew well out of the Simpsons yard line and into Ned and Maude Flanders' tree. Ned is trying to get them down, and Maude is yelling out, "Oh, hurry, Neddy! They're awful!"
You just be ready with that garbage bag. What I loved in this scene is when Homer was shaving, as soon as he got done shaving, the 5 o'clock shadow instantly came
It
back.
happens every time he shaves.
Yeah.
It's so great. So great. Absolutely.
And isn't Rex Harrison going to be hunting Homer in a future episode?
Oh,
The Beer Baron episode?
that's a good point. And Marge also has another good point here because they can, in fact, make some money, and they decide to give it a try. They go and bottle it up, and they take it to the mall, where my only complaint is they're selling it for only $1 a
Yeah.
bottle. Come on, guys. Come on.
Well, I mean, they're not the most savvy of businessmen. At least we don't think they are until Grandpa starts talking.
Yeah, Homer definitely could use some tips from his old man, because he gives it a try first, and walks up to a stranger and declares, "Sir, hello, sir. Yes, you look like a man who needs help satisfying his wife." Which, of course, gets response with a punch directly to his face.
Oh, I guess people have some sort of moral objection to our sex drug.
But Abe then basically tells his son to sit down and get out of the way.
You idiot.
All of a sudden, we see a whole different side of Abe Simpson.
Put some butter in your letter with our energizing, moisturizing, tantalizing, romanticizing, surprising, herprizing, revitalizing tonic.
Yay! And the crowd goes wild for this all of a sudden charismatic version of Abe Simpson. Everybody seems interested, including Professor Frink, who I have to say, I did notice you could not see those pupils this week. We pointed that out a few weeks ago. Very, very odd, and I'm always going to be looking for those in the future. This was glasses only. But he was very doubtful that an elixir could boast any of those properties. Only he drinks some, and with just a wave of his hand over his face and through his hair, first of all, his glasses are just gone, and he turns into a Casanova type, and in a very smooth voice, "What say we scray out of here and have a wild wingding at the cyclotron, Doctor?"
Hey, anything you say, Professor. Whoa.
We also see Milhouse's parents cashing in on this great product. "Tonight we'll push the twin beds together, and I found something for Milhouse down at the mall, too. A pup tent.
Oh boy, now I can sleep out in the yard.
Yeah, every single night."
Freaking Milhouse's dad, man. Tonight we push the twin beds together.
It's like he has no dignity or something. It's crazy.
Can he borrow a feeling?
Even Dr. Hibbert, who you would think would have some major concerns about a homemade medicine, and in fact he does.
I've discovered that the rejuvenating effect people feel is actually a mild form of poisoning. No doubt a result of the unsanitary condition in Grandpa Simpson's bathtub. Nonetheless...
We see a big old chug-a-lug-a-lug by good old Dr. Hibbert.
Ah.
Might I say how damn fine Mrs. Hibbert looks in this moment.
I know,
They
right?
really did sex up all of the women for this episode, and that sounded weird to say that. They made the women look more sexy, is what I meant to imply by that statement.
Maplethorpe! Ah!
Ah! So, we then get a glimpse down the main street of Springfield where not an adult can be seen. Bart and Milhouse are starting to get suspicious. But Nelson has a really good point. Who cares? With no adults, I run this city. Carry on.
And we're about to learn that the perfect society and the world without adults, the thing all kids wanted, there's no such thing as a utopia, Miles.
It's just a fantasy.
No, it can't actually exist.
I just want to say that this moment, the sequence with the kids down Main Street really reminded me of Children of the Corn in a lot of ways, where you've got these adultless towns out in the middle of nowhere, seemingly.
Yeah, even the South Park episode, it reminds you of that.
Sure, yeah. And, on the commentary, however, they said it's actually more of a reference to a Star Trek episode, but then it was pointed out that that was completely unintentional and just a happy accident.
The best
It
kind
was
of
kind of a
intentions.
realization after the fact. They're like, oh yeah, that's kind of like that Star Trek episode.
Crazy.
I'm not a Trekkie enough to have any idea what moment in that series they're talking about, but I'm sure somebody listening does, and let us know.
I'm guessing it's from the original series.
That would make a lot of sense. I love this sequence still with Bart and Milhouse are still trying to kind of figure out what's going on. They're talking, and in the background we can see Ralph Wiggum, and for a really long time, he is just staring blankly at a brick wall. Finally, he starts to, it almost seems like he finally realizes there are other people there, and he walks up to Bart and Milhouse.
Will you cook my dinner for me? My parents aren't around and I'm not allowed to turn on the stove.
The line's funny, but it's actually Ralph in the background that cracks me up more than his actually line in this one.
When I think we need to point out, too, that when Bart and Milhouse are talking, Bart's talking about UFOs again, and they're throwing that little part back into there about paranormal phenomenon.
Right, yeah, that's becoming the B-plot with the kids, as they're convinced that something is happening to their parents, and Bart is starting to have concerns that it might be an extraterrestrial experience.
Exactly.
Abe and Homer, however, do not have time for all of that, because they have a lot of tonic to sell and a lot of towns to visit, like Frigid Falls, Mount Seldom, and Lake Flaccid. To be fair, you gotta take it where the market demands it.
That's true. Yeah, that's great now. Homer's going to be stuck in the car all weekend with that wheezing windbag.
And to be fair, it seems like Abe isn't shutting up, because we just get the tail end of what we assume is a very long-winded rant. And that's what's wrong with Bart's generation. Now as for your generation...
Oh...
And then we do, in fact, cut to see them working together in a very old school way. You've kind of got a snake oil salesman vibe, only we know this product actually does work, is the crazy thing. Like, if they didn't go about it in this manner, it would probably be more successful. But we might find out. But
Hibbert points out that it's because it poisons you.
But it still works, dude. It still works. That's all you really need to prove at that point. You don't need to trick people, is all I'm saying. But we'll find out that there might be something in the Simpsons' genes, or at least a bond between father and son, that makes them not quite get it. We'll get there soon. For now, for the minimal outlay of just $1, you can take home a bottle of liquid Lothario, distilled Don Juan, catalytically carbonated Casanova, lock old Rover in the shed, 'cause man has a new best friend, and Simpson and Son revitalizing tonic.
I'm not convinced. I've had bad luck with aphrodisiacs.
All questions will be answered. All fears will be allayed, with one incontrovertible demonstration. May I have a volunteer from the audience? And we see Homer in the crowd, and of course they've made it so he's a plant. They declare, "Sir, you've never seen me before, is that correct?"
That is correct.
Only these dimwits put their own faces on the bottle, and these townspeople clearly aren't as dumb as they are, because one man even yells out, "Then how come your face is on the bottle?"
Yeah.
And then we see Abe and Homer in the car fleeing the scene with a pickup truck of rednecks, angry rednecks, chasing after them. And we've got this
Abe's driving.
Abe's driving, and there's this great banjo music. It's like getaway music. And that's actually the best part of this little joke here. Abe says, "You're the worst shill I've ever seen. You're a disgrace to the medicine shill business."
They didn't start chasing us until you turned on that getaway music.
So they reach down and turn off the music, and sure enough, the hillbillies just stop where they are, turn around, and head home, because it's just not quite the same without the banjo.
Exactly.
The conspiracy theories are progressing back at the Simpsons' treehouse, where we see Bart and Milhouse, along with Lisa, going over some of the possibilities of what could be happening right now.
Are you saying this is a treehouse of supposed horrors?
Ooh, nice. Bart is convinced that it's painfully clear The adults are definitely paving the way for an invasion by the saucer people.
You fool. Can't you see it's a massive government conspiracy? Or have they gotten to you too?
And Bart and Milhouse actually start to fight each other. Lisa, however, stops it and breaks it up. What are you guys jumping to such ridiculous conclusions for? Haven't you ever heard of Occam's razor? The simplest explanation is probably the correct one.
So what's the simplest explanation?
I don't know. Maybe they're all reverse vampires and they have to get home before dark. Ah! Reverse vampires! Reverse vampires! Lisa's so frustrated in this moment. It's great. And I honestly, not in this same exact boat, but there are so many times where I make jokes and nobody gets it, and I'm just like, feel like it's a similar plot.
Sure, Miles, sure.
You're a sarcastic bastard. Don't tell me that hasn't happened to you.
I do it at work all the time. I usually make at least one dad joke every night, and then I do an obscure joke, and if no one says anything, I just turn around and walk away. You idiots.
Well, back on the road with Abe and Homer, they are still a little bit frustrating with everything, but as they're driving along, Abe sees an old house and points it out that it's the old Amos Pearson's moose farm.
Sounds like a good answer to a trivia question.
Oh, trivia, you say? I don't know anything about that. Not like there's going to be Simpsons trivia at the Texas Podocalypse all the way down in Austin, Texas, coming up at the end of August, for those that can make it. But I didn't know anything about that, Richie.
Oh, well then let's just move along.
Let's just move along for now.
Let's be Homer Simpson smiling politely.
Homer is confused as why they're stopping at this dump, and to be fair, it does look like a shitty old farmhouse. Abe tells him that that's the house that Homer grew up in.
Wow. Let's go find that hot dog tree I planted.
I find it a little bit weird here that even if it was only for a little while, we clearly see Homer was of age that you would think he would remember what his house looked like as a kid. Like, if you went to any of your childhood homes, I think you would probably recognize it, don't you?
Nope, I would not.
Really?
If it was the first house I grew up in, I would have no recollection of it.
I think I would remember. I feel like...
I kind of remember this. I've been past it, actually, since then. Like, my parents had both driven me past it, saying that's the house that we grew up in. And I was like, I remember the inside a little bit, but not the outside at all.
Maybe I am over-predicting or maybe I'm giving myself too much credit here for what I think I remember. But to me, I thought that was strange. But clearly, I could be wrong on that. Either way, Abe goes on to explain that they lived there until the bank foreclosed in 1963, and the farm went bust after the cows started giving sour milk. Something must have spooked them good. And we get a flashback of young Homer in the cow barn.
Stupid cows. Boo, boo, boo.
And young Homer is just traumatizing these poor animals, which apparently is what caused them to lose their home. Pretty dark joke there. Maybe a Merkin moment.
Maybe so. I don't know.
If not,
A
there's
sour
definitely one
Merkin
coming
moment.
up for sure. They start to talk about the old memories, and just about the time they start to reflect on if this old place could talk, it'd say, and suddenly everything, like literally everything, starts collapsing on Grandpa Simpson from the floor above. And when Homer starts to laugh hysterically, a bathtub falls on his head.
Which means no one stepped foot in there in years, which means it's probably still owned by Grandpa, which means he could sell it and make a fortune.
No, it'd be owned by the bank. It got foreclosed on in 1963.
Oh, that's right. I wasn't paying attention. Yeah. Wait, but it's like 1990-something now.
Well, actually, Richie, it's 2018, but you mean in the show.
Simpsons land.
Yeah, honestly, anytime they put a year on anything, I think it's a little bit weird because it creates these weird paradoxes in the future, because now we know that Homer was, a kid when they moved out, and that happened in 1963, so Homer should be like, 80-something, or whatever it is. My math's off there slightly, but you know what I mean.
If he's 5 and 63, that's 37 plus 18, which is what, 55 plus 5, he'd be 60 right now.
Yeah, and it's probably pretty close to the fact. And honestly, he looked a little bit older than 5 to me in these cutbacks. But regardless, that's for a whole different conversation, because there's clearly a lot of places you could break down some of the timeline errors in The Simpsons. That's not what we're all about. We're all about those memories, and they're still on their trip right down memory lane in that old home, and probably where, at least for Homer, most memories were made, right in front of the old Radiation King. Abe tells Homer he'd park himself right there and watch for hours on end, and one of my favorite jokes is actually a visual gag right here, because as it transitions and we see that in the future, where they currently are, the present I should say, there's a shadow on the back wall, and as we transition into the past, we actually see that that is Homer's shadow from sitting in front of the Radiation King television. And apparently when TVs were first invented, they in fact did give off a good amount of radiation.
If I may, Helen, I'd like to respond to that question with yet another flip remark.
And we get young Homer emulating already what he's seen on the television, walking up to his mom in the kitchen. Wow, look at me, or Mom, I am President Kennedy.
Which Homer sounds a little bit more like Mayor Quimby than President Kennedy,
He sure
which I guess
does.
makes sense because I think it's the same voice actor.
Is it now? You know, since you brought that up, this is actually a good time to talk about the fact that this whole episode, for the most part, obviously there's some side support, but a good chunk of this episode is just Dan Castellaneta talking to himself in different voices. And the commentary points it out, and watching back the episode, it is just so incredible that it never feels like that. And he's not the only voice actor that is capable of doing so. I mean, even other voice actors on The Simpsons themselves are very capable of this, but there's just something that is so impressive to me that this whole episode is really just one person carrying on a conversation, and I wish so badly that one day we could see Dan Castellaneta actually doing this work. It's something that he's very private about, and he doesn't like people to see him actually doing his voices, especially for Homer. It's a very personal thing for him, and I can understand why, but I just couldn't even imagine how amazing it would be to get to watch him in the booth bouncing back and forth from these different characters.
Did it say that like he literally, it's like one recording where he's changing voices back and forth, or did they say it was separate and they put it together?
Very much like when Julie Kavner does Marge's Family, where it's Marge's mother, and both twins. She's actually bouncing back and forth, going from one voice to the other. Same with Dan Castellaneta. He's actually doing the whole thing as if it's one crazy conversation. And it is edited. They do several takes in a row and they repeat lines and stuff like that. So it's not like he's just literally, it's not the way he records it ends up in the recording booth. This time David Merkin is the editor. So he's going through and he's tweaking up these lines that are given, and they'll do every line multiple times, but he'll actually go through and bounce back and forth several times.
That's really cool. I like hearing that, actually, because I would have just always assumed that they do all the one character's lines, like, you know, in a movie, how they do it in cartoon movies a lot of times, where you're never actually recording together, but literally he is recording together with himself.
Pretty much. It's a way to think of it. But back to our flashback where Homer thinks he might be president one day, and his mother is very encouraging of this idea, even says, "Oh, look, Abe, maybe our Homer could grow up to be president someday."
You? President? This is the greatest country in the world. We got a whole system set up to prevent people like you from ever becoming president. Quit your daydreaming, melonhead.
We start to flash back to the present where we can see current day Homer and Abe back in the living room.
Quit your daydreaming, melonhead.
Dad, how come you never gave me any encouragement? Maybe I could have been something more than I am. Like a travel agent, to a great scientist, or the inventor of a hilarious refrigerator alarm.
Who are you to complain? You locked me up in a home and gave me the same damn shower safety seat every Christmas.
Your whole life, you never said one nice thing to me.
That's 'cause you're a screw-up.
You're the screw-up.
Why, you little...
And we get a very classic
it's kind of
image.
Sweet to see.
Yeah, it runs in the family, because Abe is choking Homer very similar to the way we always see Homer choking Bart. All right. That's it. We're going home. I'm sick of you and your stupid tonic.
If I hadn't taken that stupid tonic 38 years ago, you'd have never been born and I'd have been happy. You were an accident.
Get out.
I'm sorry I said that.
Out.
I'm going to get out of the car, and I hope you'll find it in your heart not to drive away.
And Homer skids out.
Well, I'll be alright as long as I can remember my army training.
We then get a great transition from, it's all with animation. We see the sun set and the moon rise.
Dang.
And Grandpa, out in the middle of nowhere, seemingly with no ride and only a busted old farmhouse for shelter, is how we are going to be left as we go into our second break. That's the end of our second act. We're going to be right back with the conclusion of Grandpa versus Sexual Inadequacy after just a short break.
Hi, it's Mike Reese. I've been writing for The Simpsons for 30 years. I ran the show in seasons 3 and 4. I created The Critic. And now I've written a book. It's called Springfield Confidential, and it is the first insider's look at The Simpsons. It's filled with secrets, scandals, and tales of censorship and celebrities. It's a great book. It's like a Simpsons episode. It's fast, it's smart, and it's packed with hundreds of jokes, some of them funny. Please buy Springfield Confidential. You can order it now on Amazon.com.
Greetings, friend. Do you wish to look as happy as me? Well, you've got the power inside you right now, so use it and send $1 to Best Darn Diddly. You can find us on Patreon.com or donate to us directly on PayPal at bestdarndiddly@gmail.com. Don't delay. Eternal happiness is just $1 away.
$1 for eternal happiness and to support one of my favorite podcasts. I'd be happier with $1.
We begin Act 3 back at the Simpsons' home, where Grandpa Simpson has managed to get back into town.
How did he get home?
I have no idea. I guess he must have found a payphone. It's the only thing
But
I
who
can
did he
imagine.
call?
A cab. A really expensive cab ride. Because there was no Uber, and he didn't have a smartphone. But no, honestly, it's the fact that where did he find the phone is what I would wonder. Because, I mean, he was miles from anything.
I mean, he did know where he was because that was their old home. So
True.
I assume he knows where they were.
I guess he could have hitchhiked. It was
Maybe.
it was off of a country road. I mean, there does traffic on there, but either way,
Maybe he put on his drag outfit again. And
we don't want to know what Grandpa did to get back into town. Actually, so he is back at the Simpsons' home. He has flowers in hand. He's saying he's sorry, but Homer doesn't want to hear it. Abe actually shoves the flowers through the mail slot, which just creates a big old mess. Marge is trying to kind of counsel Homer and help him to realize that maybe he should make up with his father. Homie, are you really going to ignore Grandpa the rest of your life?
Of course not, Marge. Just for the rest of his life. He said I was an accident. He didn't want to have me.
You didn't want Bart.
I know, but you're never supposed to tell the child.
You tell Bart all the time. You told him this morning.
But when I do it, it's cute. So selfish, that man.
So up in the treehouse now, while this is happening in the main house, the Simpsons children have hit full-on X-Files over on these conspiracy theories. They actually play some pretty good X-Files homage music throughout this little sequence here, but they have finally come to an agreement. All right, here's what we've got. The Rand Corporation, in conjunction with the Saucer People,
Thank you.
under the supervision of the Reverse Vampires, are forcing our parents to go to bed early in a fiendish plot to eliminate the meal of dinner. We're through the looking glass here, people.
I love that little moment. Millhouse doesn't get a lot of moments like that.
No, that was a great
I really
Millhouse
like it.
moment. Yeah. I
Through the
agree.
Looking glass here, people.
It was a really fun line. I love that so much. I really do. Homer is trying to talk to Bart about the situation they're in, but Homer is a little bit distracted by Bart's candy bar.
Kids, your daddy and his daddy are involved in a very sticky, nutty, chewy, chocolatey, put it away, boy, situation. And your daddy has realized something very important. A father should always make his kids feel wanted. Starting right now, I promise to spend a lot more time with you and give you the attention you deserve.
And Homer scoops his children up in a hug, only it's more of a chokehold. And we know, just by this one image, that Homer's attempt at being a more attentive father is probably not going to go well. But before we find out, we see that Abe is still on the road trying to push this tonic that he's created, and he's found a replacement son. It's Barney, who isn't quite up to snuff, because when he walks out on stage, he just basically says, I used to be a fat, disgusting blob. Blech.
That medicine seems to be giving your son a lot of gas.
I assure you, his belching is the result of an unrelated alcohol problem. And Barney literally collapses in front of this crowd, and Abe instantly realizes this is not going to work. He even says, it just ain't the same without Homer. He knew how to drive a car.
Yeah, you don't want Barney doing that.
And we see Abe walking to the next town. Back with Homer and his kid, sure enough, he is giving this parenting thing a try. Son, my dear son, from now on I'm going to be a good and attentive father. And for starters, your old man's going to teach you how to ride your very first bike. And we see him pull out what is clearly a girl's bike with training wheels.
And it's pink.
And it's pink, yeah.
Number 1, I know how to ride a bike. Number 2, I already own a bike. And number 3, that is a girl's bike.
You're no girl. You're a boy. A good boy. You can be president. Scratch that. You will be president.
Dad!
I think Lisa needs another push on her new tire swing.
No, Dad, I want to get down. This tire is filthy and the steel belts are poking me. And it's really high up in the air, too.
It's like 12 feet. He can barely reach it. And Homer still gives her a push, though. Wee! Wee! While Lisa's screaming out, no! No!
No offense, Homer, but your half-assed underparenting was a lot more fun than your half-assed overparenting.
But I'm using my whole ass.
Dad, it's just that too much of your love can really be scary.
Someday you'll thank me for all this scary love, but now I've got to go somewhere and do some serious thinking. We see Homer get in the car and drive off.
I'm sure he meant to say serious drinking.
That's what I assumed.
See, to me, that was the Merkin moment.
That is a Merkin moment for sure. Yeah, you're absolutely
It's such
right.
a somber
Very
line.
Dark. Well, Homer did have some actual thinking to do for once. He wasn't off to Moe's for a beer. He was actually off to the old house where he grew up and where it all started. He starts to wander around a bit and try to find out where it all went wrong. And he ponders, how is he supposed to be a good dad when he's never had a good dad himself? He ends up kicking the wall, which causes a book to fall from the shelf, and when it falls, it opens up to
a highlighted book, and it was clear that it was involved in the scene before.
Yeah, it's very clearly one of those things where it's not part of the background, yeah.
Yeah.
Not as bad as like Scooby-Doo, where you could clearly tell which door is going to open and which one isn't, but you can see that this book has a lot more life to it than some of the animation in the background does. When it does fall, though, it opens to reveal a photo of a young Homer meeting Santa Claus on Christmas morning. He has to strike a match so he can see this picture more clearly, and he starts to get depressed when he thinks that even on Christmas, his father wouldn't even be around. He wasn't even there when he got to meet Santa, Richie.
Some father. Wait a minute.
As Homer looks more closely at Santa, he realizes it was his father dressed up as Santa all along.
Aw, this photo is a blessing. It eases my pain.
But almost as soon as he declares it to be a valuable asset to easing his pain, he accidentally lights it on fire with the same match he used so that he could see it more clearly.
Did you ever have that moment where someone you knew was dressed up as Santa Claus when you were at some kind of Christmas gathering?
No, I've never had somebody I personally know dress up as Santa. Have you?
My father did one year in the apartment complex we lived in when I was probably about 10 to 12, whatever year the Nintendo 64 came out.
That would have been 1996, I do believe.
So that would have been about 12 then, because that would have been 6th grade, I think. So I may have told the story on our podcast before, but we've been doing this a long time, so we're forgetful and you're forgetful. I'll go ahead and retell it.
I'm excited to hear it for the first, second, or third time.
15th time it is. Here we go. My father got the illustrious role of Santa Claus in the apartment complex's Christmas party one year. And when he was going to play Santa, he had like they wanted me to be an elf, a helper elf, essentially. And I only had to be there for a few minutes. So while I'm waiting to go, it was the year that the 64 had come out, and I think in like August or September, and Christmas is rolling around. My dad had rented a 64 from Blockbuster and a PlayStation 1. We'd played both of them. The 64 was the way to go, absolutely, at that time. So I didn't know if I was going to get one. He knew I really, really wanted it. He had already made it clear that it was probably going to be coming at some point in time. And I went. He was notorious for hiding Christmas presents at his work office. I go in his bedroom while he's playing Santa Claus, and I'm just snooping, because that's what kids did back in the day.
Of course.
Kids still do. I open a drawer and I see one of those Toys R Us tags that says Nintendo 64 on it, where it's just like a receipt, basically.
Nice.
And I was like, oh! I knew what that meant. I mean, he had already bought one. It probably just hadn't arrived yet. So I go to the Christmas party and I just got the shittiest grin on my face. I'm already red with excitement. I'm about to do something terrible. And everyone's like, oh, look, it's Larry and his son. Oh, let's take a picture of you guys together. So I go and sit on my dad's lap, and he goes, oh, what do you want for Christmas, little boy? And I look him dead in the eyes, and I go, I want the Nintendo 64 that's hidden in the closet.
You are a piece of shit, sir, but I love you.
I don't know if I'd ever seen my dad turn that red before in my entire life. With a full Santa beard on and costume on, I just saw his whole face get flustered. And everyone's just cracking up. And I think they may have even took a picture. I don't know where it's at. I gotta have it somewhere, but I'm pretty sure they still took the picture. And I think I might have said it after the picture was taken. Or it might have been taken after the comments. So they didn't catch the comments in the picture, but I just remember just the asshole that I was. I was so proud of myself.
That makes so much sense to the Richie that I know and love. So that's a perfect fucking story.
He was a little pissed.
But you still got
But
the
he still loved
64, so all that ends well is well, or whatever.
Yeah,
the
he was
saying
always
is.
really good at Pilot Wings on that system.
That's a good. I still have that game.
He really enjoyed that one a lot.
Very cool. Wow, that's actually a really relevant story to this episode, and I don't think you've ever told me that before, man.
Oh, wow.
Well,
I'm glad to share.
Yeah, that's actually really cool.
He did not strangle me, by the way.
Well, so your dad only has the one thing in common with Abe. But Homer essentially has this realization in the old house, and it's very emotional. And then what's really great about this sequence, the scene, is that just in the next room, Abe is having his own emotional moment, only it's a little different. He's sitting in front of the fireplace talking about how this tonic has only caused him trouble. And he decides it's done all the damage it's ever going to do while throwing the bottle in the fire. But remember, it's mostly cologne, which is alcohol, so it burst into flames, and now we've got...
asbestos pills.
True, yeah. And now we've got two independent fires starting in this one old rickety fire starter of a house, all going up in flames. And Homer and Abe both run out of the house screaming,
Dad!
Son!
I'm a screw-up. I burned down our house.
No, I'm a screw-up. I burned down our house.
You know what?
What?
We're both screw-ups.
It doesn't matter. What matters is, you were right when you told me I never said anything nice about you.
So, Are you going to say something nice now?
Well, I hadn't thought that far ahead. Okay. Here it goes. I'm not sorry I had you, son. I was always proud that you weren't a short man.
Aw, Dad.
And we see the father and son embrace. Mind you, they're standing on the front porch still of this house that is now completely up in inferno. And the house is actually collapsing when Abe finally suggests, "What do you say we roll in the grass, son?"
I'm with you, Dad.
And as they start to roll in the front yard, we can see that both Simpsons men's backs are actually on fire, and they are now stop, dropping, and rolling, trying to get out the flames. That's how we actually go into our closing credits. That brings us to the end of the episode, Grandpa versus Sexual Inadequacy. Richie, was there anything else that you or that book of yours wanted to point out about this episode?
My guidebook, The Simpsons, A Complete Guide to Our Favorite Family, points out some of the books we saw in the bookstore. The sign outside on the way in said books, and additional books, and today's special, Mishner, $1.99 a pound. So that's pretty cheap, I'm guessing, for a book of that poundage. The sex books that we saw was Kosher Erotic Cakes, How to Seduce Your Lousy Lazy Husband, Bordello Repair Volume 1, Bork on Sex, Weight Loss Through Laborious Sex. So we got a real quick glimpse of some kind of funny moments there. I wanted to point out that this will not be the last time that Marge and Homer have intimacy issues or problems feeling the spark still. I mean, we know we'll get that future episode where they start having sex in public and like the fear of getting caught gets them aroused. So,
and then they revisit their old spot at the mini golf course, I do believe.
Yeah. I enjoy how, I mean, you could say it's a retread of an old storyline, but I feel like it's just more realistic where over the years, like, that's how people are. That's how people behave. It doesn't stay at the same, you're not always ready to go 24/7 through your entire life. I'm assuming. I don't know. I'm not married, so I don't know how this goes. So I can't speak to married people, but I'm just saying to me, it feels very real. But other than that, I enjoyed this episode, but it wasn't as high on my list, I feel like, as I thought it was going to be before going into it.
I would agree in that I still very much enjoyed the episode. I thought that it was very smart. It handled a very real topic in a very Simpsons
Reverse
way.
vampires?
Yeah, exactly. But no, handled a very real topic in a very Simpsons sort of way. But when we compare these episodes going back, like even the last 3 weeks, Bart's Girlfriend, Lisa on Ice, Homer Badman, all of these episodes had high marks in my mind of like, I remembered them fondly, but this episode just didn't quite live up to the bar that I had remembered, even though it's still great. And this is the first time that's really happened this season, which is kind of strange. Again, still a fantastic episode, but you also have to keep in mind that we've been reviewing a lot of 9.0 or close to it rated episodes. And while this one is still a very highly rated episode, it actually does, in fact, take, I believe, a full point off, because just going from last week to this week, Homer Badman was a 9.0, Grandpa vs. Sexual Inadequacy is an 8.0. Again, still a fantastic episode. I do want to say another couple things about this before we get out of here. First of all, I don't think I ever mentioned that on the commentary this episode was David Merkin, the director Wes Archer, and the writing team that will eventually go on to be showrunners themselves, Josh Weinstein and Bill Oakley. Josh Weinstein and Bill Oakley, at the time of this commentary recording, which would have been about 2004, both said that they still could not believe that this episode aired, and they both feel that it is probably the most R-rated episode of The Simpsons that they had ever done.
Wow.
I also want to point out, Rich, that we missed a pretty big Simpsons Did It.
Sex?
Kind of, in a roundabout way. Backing up all the way to 1989, there is a little drug called sildenafil citrate that was originally intended to help out with blood pressure, but it had a very interesting and a very stiff side effect. Jump ahead to 1996, where this same drug, sildenafil citrate, which is a failed blood pressure medication at this time, is now being patented under the name Viagra. Viagra would go on to hit the United States drug market in 1998, 4 full years after this episode aired.
A happy accident.
So what I'm saying is Simpsons did it when it comes to erectile dysfunction medication.
She wants the diddly.
And that is going to do it for this week's Best Darn Diddly Review Show. You can follow Richie at theWiz_Kid23.
And you can follow Miles at MrMostDaysOff, where he is off most of the days, except never.
Oh god, I wish that weren't untrue. You can follow our show everywhere at Best Darn Diddly. That's DIDDLY. Make sure to give us a subscribe on YouTube. We could really use the help growing the show there.
Make it WeTube. Let's go, people.
If you've got a moment, give us an iTunes review. That always helps, especially if it's a positive one.
And don't forget, Krusty will be very upset with you if you don't help us out on our Patreon page as well. So if you've got a little extra cash flow coming in, help the show grow.
Or a little extra dough.
Dough, indeed.
And that's at patreon.com/bestdarndiddly. Richie and I would once again like to thank each and every one of you for coming along on this journey through the golden age of The Simpsons and beyond. We look forward to being back with you again next week when we're going to be discussing the episode Fear of Flying.
And remember, at this point, we're through the looking glass here, people.
Until next time, be cromulent to each other.
Hey, this is the Toph, host of the Gravity Beard Podcast, a variety show with interviews and discussions on a wide range of topics. Our guests have included a viral YouTube star, a former child actor. We've even had a guy on who may have solved the D.B. Cooper case. It's a delicious box of audio chocolate. You never know what you'll get. Find it on Podbean, iTunes, and other places you listen to podcasts. It's the Gravity Beard Podcast. It's what your ears will want to be listening to.